Okay, in this parable, there is this guy called Nero. Nero is part of the Tamil community. That is an ethnic group from the south of India and from Sri Lanka. Now, Nero, even though he was born in Sri Lanka, he grew up in Montreal, Canada. And Nero each month donated 10 Canadian dollars to a charity organization that operated in Sri Lanka on behalf of the Tamil. So nothing wrong there, right? He is from Sri Lanka, he belongs to the Tamil ethnicity, and he has his job, he's not into drugs, he's not into criminality, and he wants to contribute to the Tamil cause in his homeland, Sri Lanka. So even at the government, on his tax papers, it was visible that he often donated $10 to a charity organization. And nobody bothered about it, it was just 10 Canadian dollars. Then one day, Nero decided to stop the donations. When he sent his letter, signed that he wanted to stop his donations, the ambassador of that charity organization asked him why. Nero did not give any explanation, so the ambassador left it at that. His relatives began to bother him, asking, "Why not, Nero? Why not?" Nero told them he had his reasons. After a lot of fights, his relatives left him alone. They didn't even bother with the issue. And here's the thing, the municipal worker at Montreal who did the taxes realized that this Nero stopped donating to that charity organization while all of his relatives did. So now at the taxation office of Montreal, if you want to call it that way, the people became a bit suspicious, and they even informed the police about it because they thought this guy has grown up in this community. He is known in that community because the Tamil community in Montreal isn't that big. And all Tamils support this charity organization, but now he decided to leave it. So now the people at taxation was thinking, what's going on here? And the detectives at the Montreal police looked into the case, and he also realized, hold on a minute, this ain't right. And so the police began to investigate this charity organization. They checked the bank accounts, and they saw that the charity organization received money from almost all the Tamils that lived in Canada, and the money then went to an account in France. And the Montreal police was not authorized to look further than that. So the detective called his French counterpart in Paris to check it for him. And there, the Paris police found out that there was a restaurant, an Indian restaurant, run by a Tamil family that received the money. And then, when this was reported to the Montreal police, the detective asked, hold on a minute, what is this? Why does a charity organization that receives donations put the money on the bank account of restaurant owners? So they requested the Paris police to continue, and the Paris police found out that from that account it was sent to a private account in Sri Lanka. And they noticed that the owner of that account in Sri Lanka was on a national warning list of Sri Lanka, because that guy that owned that account was known as a terrorist. He was suspected of killing several people in Sri Lanka and in India. So when the Montreal police found out about this, the detective found out, he realized that, hold on a minute, there's a criminal activity over here. And he began to ask himself, why are many of Tamils donating to this organization thinking it will benefit people in the homeland, while the guy in the homeland that receives the money eventually is a known terrorist. Then the detective began to think. He thought to himself, it can't be that the whole Tamil community in Canada, some of them are second generation immigrants. It can't be that they all are willingly supporting a terrorist organization. It can't be true. And the police kept investigating the case, and they found out that there was deception going on. It was a terrorist organization in Sri Lanka that pretended to be a charity office that had an ambassador in Montreal that received donations. And people in the Tamil community, they would donate out of solidarity to their homeland. That was their motive. None of those people asked the right questions, where this charity organization was even real. Because they donated a small amount, just 10 Canadian dollars, it wasn't much. But the money that was received in Sri Lanka, that all those Canadian dollars, in that local currency of Sri Lanka, there was a lot. And weapons, arms were dealt, there was prostitution being financed with it. But those Tamils in Canada, they weren't even aware of it. And those didn't realize that something was wrong, because some didn't notice that something was off. They didn't care, because why? They got the validation of the community, that they were loyal to their homeland. That Nero, however, did his research and he found out what was going on. And he did not want to be a part of it. Now Nero knew that his relatives were not open to know the truth. He knew that those people were only interested in the validation they got from each other. He knew that. He knew how troublesome those people could be. And Nero had no intentions of becoming an outcast within the Tamil community, because he faced some discrimination, though his background in Canada also, so he realized it was important to have your own ethnic people to support you. And so Nero still made the step to stop sending finances, stop donating. And Nero even told his relatives that he was about to lose his job. So people can understand, okay, if you're going to lose your job, of course you're not going to donate because you don't have any money. Now, what did Nero do? Was Nero a coward? No, he was not a coward. He was wise. He did not want to start unnecessary trouble, because family conflicts can even lead to homicide. And Nero saw that if he would tell the full truth of why he was closing down his donations to that charity organizations, he knew that most people would not even believe what he found out, and that people would take it out on him. So Nero did it wisely. He sought for a cover for what he was about to do. Nero did not buy into that Western mentality of being plain and honest and be right to the point and not beating around the bush. Nero realized that beating around the bush is a wise thing to do when you're dealing with something contentious. He knew that plain transparency, what people call honesty in Canada, would not serve him well. Now look, there are many things you can learn from this parable. The one thing that you do learn is to look at the bigger picture. Nero, for years he donated. Since he was 11 years old, he would do jobs for relatives, he would earn some money, he would donate it. And when he donated it, that was part of belonging to the group. And he got the validation of the group, so it was all okay. But then Nero began to think, hold on a minute. I grew up in Canada. I was just 2 years old when I came to Canada. So I grew up in Canada. I also have a Canadian passport. It's alright that I have a connection to my home country, but why is it that most people donate to this charity organization, but never can a charity organization show what they have accomplished? Nero began to think if you donate to a charity organization, you would expect them to use the money on a charity. So Nero began to suspect that there's maybe a cheat over here, and when he looked at the bigger picture, he saw that, okay, when he went online, when he kept making phone calls, he couldn't find any charity organization in Sri Lanka that was named after the name they were donating to. He looked at the bank account, and the bank account was a French bank account. So Nero thought, okay, this ain't right. If I'm donating money and it goes to a French bank account, then something's up. He told this to a Tamil friend of his, not a direct relative, but a friend of his, and that friend told him, well, probably the charity organization has an office in Europe, those things go. But Nero knew something was up. And look at this. The Montreal police, when they found out about this, they began to monitor Nero. Why would they begin to monitor Nero? Why? Because they realize if Nero is alert and he knows something, that means that he probably would have stopped donating because there's something coming that he doesn't want to face. So Nero became a suspect. He was not aware of it. Now look, this is also what you need to understand. And this is what you can also learn from this parable. Once you become a stakeholder in something, to become a stakeholder in something is very easy. It happens very quickly. But to pull out as a stakeholder, that doesn't just happen. It doesn't. Okay, where am I going with this? I want to talk about stakeholdership. Now, we know what stakeholdership is. If you don't look it up in a dictionary, look it up online. It means that you have a share in something. Look, if you go to Wall Street and you buy a share of a company, you become a stakeholder in that company. That means that when decisions have to be made based upon the amount of shares you have, you can vote and you can voice your opinion about what should happen to the company. Of course, those with the most shares have the most to say. Alright? Democracy is a system of stakeholdership. If you have the citizenship of a country, you are considered a stakeholder of the political decisions of that country. That doesn't mean that you directly decide what's going on, but you have a right to voice your opinion about the matters, and you have a right to vote to empower a political movement in that country. Why? Because you are a citizen, so you are a stakeholder. If you have a family business, people that are part of that family are stakeholders of that business. Look, just because you're involved with something doesn't mean you're a stakeholder. You can work 20 years at a warehouse, but you're just an employee, okay? You're not a stakeholder, so when decisions have to be made, you're not invited to the meetings. Neither are you asked for your opinion. Or, let's say you attend a church for so many years. You're just a churchgoer, and you pay your tithes there, but you're not a stakeholder of it. So, involvement doesn't automatically mean you're a stakeholder. But look, when you go to the spiritual, it works a bit different. I want to talk about spiritual stakeholdership. Okay, about spiritual stakeholders. When you think a certain way, that way of thinking is either in line with Christ, in line with the Messiah, or that way of thinking is antichrist. That means that way of thinking is darkness. Now, a black and white way of thinking based upon self is automatically darkness. Okay? Okay? Being in agreement with Christ means you agree with the gospel and you think in union. The way of thinking of worldly people is thinking in exclusivity, which isn't black and white thinking. Now, there are things that are black and white, okay? But that doesn't mean you should have a black and white mentality. Get that straight. But understand this. If you have a way of thinking that does not agree with Christ, it means it is in agreement with Satan. You don't have to be a practicing Satanist. You don't have to be a voodoo priest. You don't have to be an Illuminati member. You don't have to be someone with ill will towards others. You can have a kind-hearted and all of that. But if that way of thinking of yours is not in agreement with Christ, it's in agreement with the paranormal. And look at this. When you hold on to ways of thinking that don't agree with Christ, that can't be reconciled with Christ, then you have become a stakeholder in the paranormal. That does not mean that you are paranormally active through witchcraft and all of that. You may not even want to know or be involved with evil spirits and with spells and all of that. You may be someone that avoids all of that. It doesn't matter if you have a way of thinking you're holding on to, that you are investing in, because when you hold on to a way of thinking, it's the same as investing in it. So if you have a pattern of thinking that is not in agreement with Christ, you are investing in the paranormal. And by doing this, you become accessible to demon spirits. Yes, you heard me right. Does this mean that you agree with what demons are doing to other people? No, it doesn't automatically mean that you agree with it or that you support it. Nevertheless, you are a stakeholder in darkness when you hold on to ways of thinking that don't agree with Christ. It doesn't matter if you are born again with the Holy Spirit inside of you. It doesn't matter if you go to church every Sunday or on every Sabbath. It doesn't matter if you so-called try to keep the commandments. It doesn't matter if you are praying every day or if you're fasting every day. It doesn't matter if you can speak in tongues and in the language of angels and all of that. It doesn't matter if you're receiving visions and dreams. If your mindset does not agree with Christ, if your mind is not renewed, you are a stakeholder in darkness. And if you are a stakeholder in darkness, I would check those so-called visions and dreams that you're having to see whether they are from the Holy Spirit or not. Because remember, when you are a stakeholder in darkness, demons have access to you. Now listen to me carefully. You don't have to have bad intentions. Look, we all grew up in the world. We all received ways of thinking. We were all conditioned by the world. So there are demonic strongholds in our thinking that we are not aware of. Why? Because most people think that way. Even many believers, so we think it's all right. But it's not. That's why it's important to be renewed in your mind. We're not commanded to empty our mind like pagans tell us. We are called to renew our mind. To renew our minds with the word and allow the Holy Spirit to transform our thinking. Why? Because if your mind is not renewed, you are still part of, how do I say it, that shadow that demons are keeping upon the world. That's what you're a part of. And you don't even have to be aware of it. And look, there is one deception that Satan often uses, and many people are not aware of this deception. So let me explain it to you. In this case, okay, I'm going back to the parable I gave in the beginning of this recording. Yet this Nero that found out about the deception, about the scam. He found out that the charity donation, the donation really meant to finance prostitution, ritual killing, and arms trade. When he found out about that, for him it was over. He didn't want to sustain that anymore. Now, in the spirit, when you withdraw your support from a demonic stronghold, there is going to be resistance against it. Especially by those around you who are blind or who are in denial of their investment in that demonic stronghold. There is going to be. It doesn't matter how kind, how intelligent, or how wise you deal with a situation, there is going to be resistance. That's why understand the following. The way you, how do I say it? The way you think about others is itself an investment. So that's why beware of becoming fed up with people. Beware with being so-called honest about how you think and feel about stuff. Evaluate your way of thinking. I'm not saying this. I'm not saying this to judge you, I'm not saying this to condemn you. I'm not. I grew up in the world also just like everyone else. I was born in a fallen state just like everyone else. I had to be born again also. And after becoming born again, I had to be delivered also. And I'm still growing in righteousness, in operating in righteousness. It's the righteousness of Christ that I've received. Now I'm learning to operate in it. I'm still learning it. So I'm not claiming to be the big man who knows it all, looking down on you. No, that's not the case. I'm telling this to alert you. Evaluate your way of thinking. And if there are people you don't want to see, you don't want to hear about, especially then evaluate why and deal with that tension. I'm not saying you have to embrace everyone and hug everyone and open yourself to everyone. No, I'm not saying that. Okay? But that offense thing that the world has taught you, unlearn it as soon as possible, because that offense thing, it's a doorway for demons to access you. And you will not be aware when demons are accessing you. You won't. So why would you make yourself vulnerable for demons to have access to you? Look, in the parable I gave at the beginning of this recording, those police officers could start an criminal investigation, and the legal system can even prosecute many Tamil people that were involved in sending money into that scam. And you know what? Nero saw this coming, so Nero wanted to opt out. But it was his opting out that made him now the target. So understand, when you divorce from bad ways of thinking, don't expect a reward and understanding of the world around you. Just remember that the dragon, or as he's known as Satan, he is the little g, the god of this world system. So he has dominance, and in many cases even control upon the minds of the masses. And most people are not even aware that they are under the sway of the enemy. So don't expect that when you divorce from a demonic stronghold that you're going to be praised by others. There are things you do that will get you praise from others. Things are good. But even then, you need to ask yourself whether that praise is really going to benefit you or whether it's a trap to keep you in self-validation, to make you codependent on the approval of others. Because that's also a thing. A lot of people, they want to change, they want to do the right thing because they know they will be valued by others when they do it. No. Whether or not you're valued by others for doing the right thing or not, you should do it because it's the right thing and it's beneficial for you, and especially because it pleases the Most High. That's why you should do it. When you rely upon the approval of others, you're already trapped. There are people who are so-called rebels who fight against everyone and they don't care what other people think of them. You have such people. Now that's not the purpose either. Look, to not be codependent on others doesn't mean that you regard others as nothing and do whatever you want at their expense. No. It means that you realize that your affection should be put on things above in Christ. Yes, you are on the earth. You can have earthly longings. You can have earthly enterprises. You can be active on the earth. You can be active in the world. But your allegiance must be in the Messiah. And that's the thing with worldly people. They don't have stuff most of the time. The stuff that has them. They don't have possessions. The possessions possess them. Just go outside and look how people treat their mobile phones. Many people think they have an iPhone, but it's the iPhone having them. And demons are using this to trap those people. Is there anything wrong with having an iPhone? No, absolutely not. But many people, it's the iPhone having them. Well, I'm going to close this recording. That's been quite long. I didn't speak that fluently throughout this message. Oh, because I recorded it step by step. So forgive me for that. Anyway, I hope this video has benefited you. And just like that Nero in this parable that I gave was wise in his dealing, grow in understanding to act wise in your dealing. It is and it will be life-saving, not just for you. Well, that being said, now, be at peace, and I'll keep you subscribers in my prayers.